Hello everyone, this is Thoughtful Thursdays from Tornado IP, where innovation meets strategy and patents and IP. And today I'm here with Mike again because we had a very interesting day last week at the Clean Tech Conference at the Wilmington Innovation Center in Delaware. And this was an event, a whole day long event where there were 30 or so small startup companies pitching their ideas to investors. All of them had really great pitches and really interesting ideas, and they all were in need of funds to further scale up and further protect their market. In addition, we had separate conversations outside the pitch where we were able to ask more questions and learn more about their technologies. One of the events during the regular sessions was an investor panel, and venture capitalists, large investors were discussing their experiences working with founders. And I had a question that really surprised me at this panel, and it was, I asked them, when you have founders coming to you with technology, what percentage of them, when they come to you, you feel comfortable that their intellectual property is actually protecting their market? And they said less than half, less than half. And this is actually was really interesting because as we walked around and talking to the individual founders, we also kept on asking them about, are you okay with intellectual property? Do you need IP strategy support from Tornado IP? And every single time the answer was like, oh yeah, we're working with a patent attorney, we filed patents, or sometimes even we have a patent attorney on our board. But that's not the same as is your market protected with intellectual property. Typically I think of a patent attorney who works hand in hand with the business and technical leadership to protect and develop a strategy. But just because you're working with a patent attorney, they don't necessarily understand your business strategy, your R&D strategy. They will do what you ask them to do. Certainly they'll draft a patent application, but that doesn't mean that they signed off that your market is protected. So I think that's kind of the idea why we decided to do the podcast today, so that we can kind of clarify some of the concepts around IP. And the reason I started Tornado IP Consulting is because I have seen this over and over again in large Fortune 500 settings as well, that you have really smart people with really good technical backgrounds come in and innovate and invent, but they don't understand the foundational concepts around patents and IP strategy because you don't go to school for that, you don't learn that. And so IP strategy and Tornado IP is here to help you get some of those things that you need to know to protect your innovation and be effective. And so then when you do go to a patent attorney, you don't waste your time and money, but you specifically approach things from what you need. So Mike, you met with several founders in the speed sessions before the conference. Maybe we could start with Sumed's technology. This is a company that was working on the encapsulation. Maybe you can describe for our audience what you learned and what are some concerns that we might have.
Yeah, the company's name is Anvigen, and it's interesting. They have a technology that makes biodegradable encapsulant for some active ingredient, and in fact had information and data on small trials where they put a treatment for beehives that slow controlled releases a pesticide that kills mites, which are damaging bee colonies, but is not such a quick release that it overpowers the bees. So they have data on that by their method of making these biodegradable capsules and then putting the active ingredient in, or they may do it the opposite way, that is, they encapsulate the ingredient as one. So that's interesting, and it wasn't limited to bees or that one active, and in fact their idea is all sorts of active ingredients could be encapsulated when you want some slow controlled release. They have at least one, I forget, maybe a couple, I've seen one, patent application filed, and presumably this field test that was done in actual beehives was done under an NDA, because if it wasn't themselves. That's a point we've talked about, I think, in previous discussions, that if you disclose something publicly by doing a trial like that, but it's not under NDA with someone outside your company, then it kind of counts as it could count as a public disclosure against you. And so they have that going. So that's interesting, and they're interested in what else they have, what else it could deliver active ingredients to stuff like, say, antimicrobials, agricultural products, stuff that prevents mold and algae growing on coatings. That could be a big use. So you can picture all kinds of use, and there is encapsulation of active ingredients by others prior to this. So theirs was. I'm not sure what the difference is, whether it's the biodegradability or the way it controlled releases. I'm not sure what the differences between prior encapsulation methods and this are.
So if you were to advise them, let's say like they come to Tornado IP and they want help, what would you do to assess and how we could help them develop IP strategy?
So if the function that their umbrella technology gives is a safe, controlled release, or maybe a stable storage form, and then can be delivered in controlled release, what else is done already? Because it's not as though no one does this by some method. Whether it's there are medical patches that people put on, or some plastics have stuff in them that slow release. So what's done today? I'd want to know that, and for their business success, how are they going to displace that? Why is someone going to choose their stuff over the others? I can see, and again, they do put in their description of the materials biodegradable shell or encapsulant, and so you can see a lot of people don't want plastics that will remain in the environment for a long time after, whether it's a growing season for agriculture, for example, or others. So that could be a reason someone would switch. And I'd want to know what else has been, how have others tried to solve that? And so I'd like to know the difference, because again, it is a great idea and they have an interesting way to address it. Has anyone else come close? And that's what an end user is going to be choosing between their method and someone else's.
Another interesting concept here where intellectual property could be important is regulatory, Mike, because I can definitely see the regulatory environment is changing in Europe and in the US as well, and I could see that maybe there are existing encapsulant technologies that are no longer going to be allowed, whereas such a biodegradable technology might be allowed. And I think that in the controlled release space, cost is a pretty big deal in a healthcare space. So why would you switch to something that might be a little bit more expensive? And certainly if there's regulatory reasons, you might. So I think that's a place to explore, to see.
That's actually an interesting point, because they did in the Republic. They also got to give their pitches to the larger audience, and that was an element that after this beehive successful test, they are now seeking regulatory approval. So even if it's not a new miticide that they're using, the formulation of it also needs to be approved before you can release that in. And so that could be an advantage of theirs. Say the encapsulant is a material that's already known to the agricultural world. That might be easier to get regulatory approval. And or something that's used today might be on a list to sunset or disappear over the coming years. And that would again give a boost to theirs. And that's the kind of, what did you call it, the environment that this is in that will impact the value that someone's going to see for this approach.
I also think that if you're going to make a decision between keeping it a trade secret versus patenting, if you're up against the regulatory space, regulatory approvals can take years in the healthcare space, 5 to 10 years even. So I think if in the meantime you're a small company and you have lots of NDAs testing your materials, it's just a potential can of worms if you haven't patented what you're doing and the application spaces for that length of time. So I think in this case, I would really strongly encourage patenting in the application spaces that will provide value. So a related topic, a concept that not everybody gets right away, the first to file versus first to market. If a founder says that filing broadly in a lot of different countries is too expensive, what are they actually trading away? And is there a way to sequence IP spend so it doesn't block early growth? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm trying to think. The question is, it would be expensive to file everywhere or to carry it through, also the full prosecution. But some of these technologies would be globally important. So it's hard to justify not filing everywhere. Or not filing in multiple places. Say you thought, say Europe, North America, and several Asian countries were going to be valuable end markets for this, where you wanted to, again, if gotten the patent, you want it to be able to prevent people from making or operating inside your claims, assuming they got granted at some time in the future. So I don't know that there's a way around that. You should certainly look at where is this going to be useful. So agricultural encapsulants, that could be widely useful. So you'd have to at least start provisional filing in multiple places that you might want to use it. If it's something that could be made and used anywhere, then that is a bigger argument also for broad filing, as opposed to if something could be only made in a few places but then used in multiple. A smaller filing profile might allow some protection, but again, not as good.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I mean, that trade secrets, I would be really wary of something like if I had that really innovative way of doing something, that how could that be protected for so long today? Let's move on to maybe another company. There was another really interesting pitch we heard about. I don't know if you want to say the name of the company, but it had to do with using fly ash feedstock to make concrete. And we had a number of questions. Really interesting technology, Mike. What's on your mind about them?
So it's interesting. I had done, 10 or 20 years ago, research in cementitious material, which does have access to fly ash. When you burn coal, there's a fair amount of coal ash or fly ash left over, and it's a giant, multi-million ton waste product that's becoming an issue for the coal burning industry. Even if coal use is going to decline, there's still a lot that has to be gotten rid of or otherwise dealt with. And so this company, it's an existing company that already has some products. Susmax, you could look them up. They describe and they show how lightweight aggregate is made. And what they do is take this waste product, coal ash, and convert it into lightweight aggregate. And I also happen to know there are other lightweight aggregate makers. People take, for example, shale, and you can heat it and it somewhat pops like popcorn, so it's lighter weight, it's expanded, and others to make concrete articles that are lighter in weight, which is good for either transport, or the building doesn't have to be as strong because you have less weight of concrete above it, or some lower weight uses like say a concrete deck on a roof. If it's somewhat expanded, it may be a little bit more insulating than otherwise, and again, not as heavy. So they looks like they do sell to that already. So it was interesting. They have I'm not sure exactly what the technology is. They do have a patent application. I would point out here, it's interesting. A number of the pitches the presenters discuss or disclose that yes, we have 1 or 2 patents on this, and often those are really patent applications, not patents. So they're not granted yet, and so it's not a guarantee that they will grant in the exact claims that are written or at all. So, but you can see what at the time they think the invention is, and the materials they make. So you can make lighter weight concrete using this as this lightweight aggregate, and they have a way to it gets rid of waste coal ash and gives strong yet lighter weight concrete. And they have some data on that in, for example, their website and patent application. So
you had some thoughts about the heavy metal content. One of the reasons fly ash is so toxic and people are trying to get rid of it is because it has heavy metals.
That is. I'd like to know about that, and it whether they know something and what the regulation of it. If there's some small amount of mercury in coal, but you're burning millions of tons, some of that goes up the stack, and that's known environmental issue, and some may be caught in the ash that's collected at the end. And so, is there mercury or other heavy metals in the coal ash? And now the aggregate you make from it and the concrete articles you make from it, is that an issue, or has that been solved? Or do they have does their methods have a way that ameliorates that? And it doesn't say. So in at least the public literature doesn't say whether that's an issue or whether it's a regulatory concern. That's a concern for
it. Could be an opportunity. A lot of times this kind of a concern becomes an opportunity for innovation.
Right. And if you don't convert it into concrete articles, then there are large, very large, and they gave an example of this, of a large, I call it a lagoon, where the fly ash is in a slurry form of sorts, and they're just storing it near the coal burning power plant, And if that dam or dike breaks, then that's a release, and it's always a concern for a release unless you can ultimately landfill it and cap it. But even that, so I'm not well versed in the regulations or technology of containing it, but there are millions of tons of coal ash that may have some environmental risks that are sitting around in somewhat open landfills. And if you can get rid of that in a safer way, that could be an opportunity. Now, I don't know what the market and regulation says about a material that may have some part per million of metals in it that you now convert into concrete infrastructure. So I'd like to know more about that, which is not necessarily an IP question, but it's the business landscape of how well this would catch on or not before, say, I was interested in investing.
Yeah, it certainly should be part of the business strategy, which then IP strategy can buttress. And in order to get things right, you need to study the regulatory landscape and how that's changing. So just kind of highlighting that IP strategy is absolutely not just about patents. It's about business strategy and regulatory risk and environmental claims and the underlying technology, which then can be part of your IP strategy. Let's talk about one more company, Mike, that was really, really cool. That was about artificial leather. They were using various different types of vegetable leftovers from processing, like kiwi peels, to create beautiful, high-quality leather that could be used in luxury goods, to couches, to a number of things. What were your thoughts talking to them?
Yeah, that was interesting in that they take, I don't want to say uniform, but somewhat uniform plant-based materials. And often it'll be, say, a company that's making apple cider, grape juice, kiwi, into the kiwi juice. It is something that has a lot of the skins and otherwise unused parts, and they have a way to dry and isolate the biopolymers that are in that. And then they care about what the distribution of cellulose, lignin, hemicellulose, the others, and they can blend them to get the right distribution of those and have a binder. And they make a material that comes out by hand feel is like leather. They may already have a shoe made from it. This is Italian-based. It's an American and Italian inventor, so it's. But I think in Italy is where they do this, and it's a way to make leather that doesn't use, because there are artificial leathers, polyurethanes or other maybe, that are mostly petroleum-based. And now this leather, of course, is from animal skins, and this is plant-based totally. So that could, an interest in that could be, one, the environmental, say, penalty of raising a lot of cattle, which maybe that's already done for meat production, but and or there's a cultural drive in some places to have only plant-based materials, not even paying attention to the environmental impact of animals. So that could be a reason people do currently seek out non-animal products, and so this is a way to get leather-like garments, if you will. But they also know leather, automotive seats, household seats, and other things that are tough like leather but did not come from animals. So it really is interesting. So
what for this company? I don't recall them saying that they have patents on everything. I do recall them saying that they have somebody that's experienced with protecting intellectual property on their board or as one of their founders. But were there any IP learnings for a new startup that's biopolymer based that you would want to mention?
What I didn't know about what I was interested in is they have a method for making a leather-like material, but besides the garment, furniture, safety gloves, etc. World, what else could a very tough material be good for? And so I know they have a method of making this material and then various articles you could make from it. But I wondered if you can think about what else would you do with something that was leather-like but didn't come from petroleum or animal. What else might you be able to do with that? Could you mold it into shapes that you otherwise wouldn't get from sheets of leather? So that's a next step I think they could think of, and they may be thinking of it already.
Yeah, I agree. And certainly understanding the landscape of parallel products like the petroleum products could give you some hints of what you should think about. Um, one word that describes the biggest IP mistake that you saw at this conference, Mike. I think you mentioned one already, actually.
One is people say this is patented, and if it's an application was filed, say 1 year ago from today, say a provisional was maybe even further, and say the application was published, so I can read something that was available to the world 1 year ago. It's a little bit misleading or overly enthusiastic to say we have this patented, because that's the case now, but it's not certain that will grant, and so therefore you can't stop someone else from practicing the exact same thing you do as disclosed in your patent until claims are granted. And that sometimes, as we saw in our previous talks, has some number of months to years that could take, depending on how complicated it is. And it could change the nature of what you get protected under those claims could change from what your original filing was. So I'd like to think that the investors that were some of the audience, they're savvy to that. So, okay, here's a line of sight that it may grant, or some fraction of it may grant, or maybe none of it would grant. We did not have talks with any of these inventors as to what's the next closest technology, or if you were thinking of someone who's going to shoot down these patent applications, what do I think is already existing out there in either prior publications of patents or commercial publications or materials that were released. So that's one, I think they get ahead of themselves a little bit.
Yeah, which actually is a shame, because if they don't know that, I think that knowing that actually strengthens your patent application and can speed up the likelihood that it's going to get granted fast, because you can make the argument that here's existing technology and it's got some flaws and I can do way better with my technology, and the patent examiner, if you are have awareness of what's out there, your patent examiner is gonna make it a little bit easier to get a patent grant around the claims.
Yeah, another thing that I didn't see, and I don't know, again, a smaller company may have, it may be more cumbersome for them to do this, but I came from a big corporation, and I don't even think we did that correctly all the time, is here's our application. I'm always curious to say, what are the next closest, if there's a couple other ways to do this, what do the other people do? And am I novel over them? Or, no, we could each get our patents, and this other one is already granted, but that one would be faster, cheaper, some other way it might be better. So if you're the only person anywhere near an invention space, okay, maybe you're in the clear and there's no one, but there's others running in other lanes. Does someone have something separate from you that may not touch your patent, or close and that they may overlap? I'd always have that prepared before I even went and talked to our patent attorneys, for example.
Yeah.
And then how do I think, and a good patent writer will ask the inventors, so how are you different than this stuff? Are you substantially different, or are you just combining a couple of other people's good ideas, and that may make more difficult the ability of the stuff to be granted? So I would hope that's part of their homework that they don't show at this clean tech conference, but that what should be done, but it's not always obvious that people do.
Yeah. If a founder has $5,000 to spend on IP this year, based on what you saw, what would be a single best use of that money? And I have a thought in my head, if you can't,
Wow.
Mike.
I don't know what, coming from a big company, I never knew what the lawyer's fees were, right? It was part of it, but I know it's substantial. So just to draft a patent, just to the day of filing, is already some thousands of dollars of your own time, and maybe the searching time, and then an attorney to draft it. So if somebody already has an invention and has not written any filings, I would want to, even before doing the lab work, I would have liked to have done a prior art search.
Yeah,
Here's whether it's an approach and a method, or a material, or a combination formulation, what have others done that are similar to that? And it might not be in the exact same field. So the artificial leather person, right, might not just search artificial leather, but tough polymers from biosources or some. If someone may have made the same material, I'm not aware of it, but for a different use, I would want to know about that. So I think a good background search is first before you think you have an invention.
I think so, and the $5,000 would definitely cover you for that.
Right.
And I think that you could, I mean, I think one sentence advice before you leave the building for many of the founders, if they had a few $1,000s to spend to come to our website, tornadoipconsulting.com, schedule some time with us, a 30-minute free consult, and we can like dig into this a little bit, and then just be their mentor in the process of how to protect their IP and how to develop IP strategy. It would be a very focused way of spending that money and spending all of the money that ends up spending on IP, which is very considerable. And if you have a strategy before you're spending that money, you're going to be way better off. So that's what Tornado IP is here for. Any last thoughts, Mike? I think, we'd love for you guys to come and find us, tornadoipconsulting.com, and schedule time.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's funny that the homework of paying attention to the landscape and getting an outside opinion. I know some inventors they're great ideas and they're in love with it, but if you're standing a little close, so if you can get someone that's a step back, either as whether they're from the investment world or from the related business world, and you might have to do this under NDA, okay, and then they might give you things to consider that you're not thinking of because you're so close to it. And I think that came up in the coffee conversations we had with the various really smart inventors. It was a lot of fun, and I think that's helpful for everyone to talk to someone not inside your small peer group.
Yeah, and that's what we offer here at Tornado IP, to give you a little bit of an outside perspective and give you some IP knowledge, patent knowledge that you might not have to have a good strategy. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone. It was really a pleasure for us to be at this conference, and we look forward to hearing from you.